This midpoint formula that I haven't written down yet, I'll write it down now, is going to give us the coordinates of the midpoint, right? In the previous section, some of the questions, they gave us the midpoint and we had to use distance formula to calculate various things. This now doesn't actually have anything to do with the distance of the line or the distance of parts of the line, right? The formula that we are learning about now is to find the actual x and y values of the midpoint. Okay, so coordinates. So the formula that we're going to use here, now guys, for midpoint, we are going to use a capital M, please, not a lowercase m. Remember, lowercase m is gradient, right? So capital M we have to use here, and you are always going to write the name of the line as a subscript. Okay, so midpoint of AB, that's how you're going to read that. And guys, this formula is very easy. Since we are calculating coordinates, the formula is also in coordinate form. And what we're going to do to get the x value of the midpoint, we're just going to take the two x values, add them together, and divide by 2. So we're going to take the x value of A plus the x value of B, whatever those two values are, and we are going to divide that by 2. It's almost like you're finding the average of the two x values. Right, that would give you the midpoint of that line. And then we're going to do the same with the y values to get the y value of the midpoint. And that's it. Right, that is how we find the midpoint, the coordinates of the midpoint of a line. So for example, we're just going to jump straight into examples because it's very simple. And guys, I'm just going to use the same abbreviation that we used for midpoint earlier in the year when we worked with midpoint formula. Find the midpoint of line AB if A is -3, 4, and B is 2, 7. All right, guys, so we have the two coordinates of the point, so we're just going to add them together, divide by 2 for x and for y. All right, so we're going to say the midpoint of AB is equal to, and guys, by the way, sometimes they tell you that, for example, C is the midpoint. Then you're going to write C equals. Okay, so if they haven't told you the name of the midpoint, then you're going to write M of AB. But if they're telling you the name, then you're going to write that name for your calculation. Okay, the x value of A is -3, and the x value of B is 2. So we add those numbers together, and we are going to divide that by 2. That will give us our new x value. The y values we're going to do the same thing with, so we're going to find or take the y value of A, which is 4, plus the y value of B, which is 7, and we're going to divide that by 2. And guys, it's fine if we get fractions for our answers here, because we can have points at fractions, right? Doesn't matter. What is -3 plus 2? -1 over 2, that's going to be -1/2. So that is the x value of the midpoint. It's going to be at -1/2. For the y value, 4 plus 7 is 11. Divided by 2, 11 over 2. You can leave it just like that, guys. You don't need to write it in decimal form or as a mixed fraction. You can, obviously, if you want to, you can write 5.5. That's fine, or 5,5. But 11 over 2 is also fine. Right, that's the formula. Okay, they can, of course, expect you to kind of work backwards. So they can give you the midpoint and ask you to find a coordinate of one of the other 2 points. So I'm just going to write this question down. Determine the values of x and y if C, which is -1, -2, is the midpoint of DE where D is -3, -4, and then they're also giving us the coordinates of E. All right, so guys, they've given us one of the 2 points of this line, and they're giving us the midpoint, right? They're basically asking us to calculate the coordinates of point E. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to use the midpoint formula again, but what we're going to say here is that C, which is -1, -2, that is the midpoint. And how would we calculate the midpoint of DE? By using the formula, right? So by taking, I'm going to start with x just because it's easier to start with what you're solving for, the x value of E plus the x value of D. Now, how's that going to work if this one is negative? It's just going to be x minus 3, right? X plus -3 is the same as x minus 3. Okay, and that is over 2. So that's how we would find the x value of that midpoint. How would we find the y value of that midpoint? By taking the y value of E and adding the y value of D to it. Again, that is a negative number, so we're going to say y minus 4 over 2. Now, the way that I write this down now is I'm actually going to split it up into 2 separate equations because we're solving for 2 variables, right? We're solving for x and we're solving for y. So I'm going to write that x minus 3 over 2, the x value of my midpoint is equal to the actual x value of the midpoint, which they gave us, -1. So you see, I'm taking the x equal x. And then I'm going to do the same thing with y equal y. All right, so and y minus 4 over 2. So the calculation for the y value of the midpoint must be equal to the actual y value of the midpoint that they gave us. And now we can solve these 2 separately. All right, on both sides, how do I get rid of that 2? By multiplying by 2 on the other side, all right? So I'm going to be left with x minus 3 equal to -1 times 2, which is -2. And then to get x on its own, what's the opposite of subtracting 3? Adding 3. So -2 plus 3 is going to be 1. Right, now we can solve for y on the other side as well. So we're going to have y minus 4 equal to -2 times 2 is -4. Now here, what's the opposite of subtracting 4? Adding 4. So guys, what's -4 plus 4? 0. So that is the y value of E. Alright, so we've solved for x and y. That's what they asked for. And the question determined the values of x and y. If they asked for the coordinates of E, could we leave it like this? No, we would have to, and I'm just going to write this in. Just as a reminder, if they ask for the coordinates of E, you would have to write E is 1, 0.